Welcome to the NICU Today podcast, a podcast to give families a new point of support as they navigate the NICU journey. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast and share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the NICU Today podcast. We're very excited to have our guest with us today. Matt Zalucki is a native of upstate New York. He and his wife, Kaylee, moved to Knoxville, Tennessee in March 2023 with the hope of starting a family. While on vacation 1,100 miles from home, their start to parenthood took an unexpected turn. Matt is here to share more about their family's journey with all of us. Welcome, Matt.
Oh, thanks, Martha. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, glad to have you here. Now, you had gone out of town on a trip when your wife was pregnant. Tell us about that trip and what happened.
Yeah, so we went to San Antonio, Texas. It was a kind of an anniversary trip turned into a baby moon once we found out that Kaylee was pregnant. Our wedding was in November of 2022. So to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, we decided to go to San Antonio. And some people may be wondering why. We just kind of picked it sort of randomly. We wanted to see Texas, and we thought about the other cities in Texas, but we settled on San Antonio, not knowing kind of what impact that would have long term. So for us, kind of connected to that city now. So we arrived first, actually, the Monday before we left. We left on a Friday. The Monday before we left, we had our checkup appointment for my wife. She was 25 weeks pregnant at the time, and everything was normal. Everything looked good. Kaylee's signs were good. Our daughter's signs were good. Every kind of had been following a normal trajectory, if you will. So we didn't think much of it. We landed in San Antonio. We went to a Spurs basketball game. We went to the Riverwalk. We went to just kind of browse around, shopping, an anniversary dinner. We were doing everything you would probably normally do on a vacation. We were 2 days away from coming home, and we, kind of were out for the day. We went back to take a nap, and, about an hour into the nap, Kaylee shot up and said, I don't feel right. I don't feel great. I'm going to take my blood pressure. She had a blood pressure cuff, which we can get into why she had that. Glad she did, though. So her blood pressure was high. It was 155 over 101. And so we called our OB because I was a little high. And we got the emergency number. And they said, that is quite high. Well, you should go and get checked out. So going down to get the car and Google Mapsing the closest labor and delivery area. Again, just kind of by chance happened to stumble into, a great NICU, a level 4. Didn't know the importance of that at the time either. So it was, again, sort of just straight luck that we were in the right spot. But we showed up at night, 6:30, and were admitted for what at the time was preeclampsia. So then about 12 hours later, they came in, told us that it had worsened, and now my wife had HELLP Syndrome, and that we needed to deliver the baby, and kind of right away. I think that was one of the first things Kaylee said was soon, and he said now, like as soon as we can, as soon as we get the approval.
Well, and Matt, I wanted to ask you, so what, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the symptoms that your wife had that she thought, oh gosh, I didn't feel right?
Yeah, it was, a little nausea, I guess, a little just sort of unease, a little bit of unease. There were no other great symptoms that she had. I will say a couple of days before, she had really bad reflux to the point where at 3 a.m. I had to go to a pharmacy to get her some medication. We think now that was kind of the early onset of this happening to her. But at the time, she didn't think it was anything other than just being on vacation, not drinking enough water, and just, maybe eating the wrong meal. So we didn't really think much of it, but yeah, just very fortunate that she had thought to bring her blood pressure cuff just to just to have it. She wanted to take a kind of a baseline of her blood pressure going into third trimester. And, when she just was not feeling right, again, for her to explain it, she said, I shot up out of bed and I just like her heart was beating fast. And she just said, I just need to check my my blood pressure right now. And
What? And I think what's so important that you said is she didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right. She called the doctor and said, we want to, you call, make sure that you get checked out while you're down there, which is what's so important.
Yeah. And especially with HELLP syndrome, because the symptoms can come on very fast. And, we got some different ideas from doctors as to what would have happened if we didn't. And the most severe outcome they had said was within the day, Kaylee could have had a stroke. Like, it's that serious. So the timing of it was so important. And we always looked at it as, let's have the professionals tell us that we're overreacting in this case. So that's how we were viewing it. We were like, the worst thing they're going to tell us is, nope, you're just a little dehydrated. Here's some fluids, and you're on your way. And that would have been fine. But if it was more serious, which it ended up being, we're glad that we did she listened to her body, and that we did take those actions.
And we can include in the notes with this episode for our listeners a link to share more about HELLP syndrome, so you can learn about what the symptoms are. And if you have questions about that, always good to ask your doctor about that as well. Now, I do want to talk with you, Matt, because I can only imagine being in a new town, away from your health system, doctors you're familiar with. How did you start to navigate that health system and figure out where to go? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And even to your point, I remember, so that the doctor came in, told us what needed to happen, told us to start prepping for the surgery. And my immediate response was, as soon as he left, was, well, we have to call UroB. We have to get her on the phone. We have to talk to her. Like, she's the one that we had built the relationship with and that I trusted. And it just took me realizing the OB in Tennessee doesn't have the information, doesn't have what they're seeing. I'm like, I need to listen to these people. But I did have that moment where I didn't want to, because I was like, what are these people telling us? Like, they're upending our whole life. So that is such a good point that, it was a scary time. And I do remember, being like, I just need to talk to our original person. But I guess we were fortunate in where we were. We were at the hospital, and that had the NICU attached. So that was part of the process of learning more and getting ingrained there. Was, I mean, it felt like every 5 minutes another person, was coming in, and it was, whether it was the surgery prep, or then the NICU doctor came in and talked to us about what to expect. So it was good, but we also had an amazing case manager down there in that NICU, and she wasn't just, she helped me navigate some medical postpartum that my wife Kaylee had too. So it wasn't just our NICU. She was our NICU case manager, but she offered me so much more than that. And I think without her, I really don't think I would have, I would have known what to do, because we're in a new city and a new place, and she was great to me. So I appreciated that.
With the case manager, did you ask to meet the case manager, or did the case manager come to you?
She came to us.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's a good point. I think if you're in the hospital, whether you're in your home hospital or you're in another town and happen to deliver in that town, to make sure you ask for a case manager at the hospital to help you with questions you have, or to help guide you through the process with the healthcare providers and just being in a new hospital. But there are case managers in all of the hospitals to be able to assist you, and you can seek them out.
Yeah. And you definitely should. If she didn't show up, I don't know that I would have thought to ask for her. So definitely a great point. So I would recommend that, use those resources. They're going to know at least to point you in the right direction.
So remind us again, what week was your daughter born, Amelia born?
Yep. So she was born 26 weeks and 5 days.
So you had a lengthy NICU stay. You started at the hospital in Texas. Were you able to transfer Amelia home? What did that process look like?
We did transfer Amelia. We were in the NICU in Texas for about 50, 51, 52 days. So we were there for 2 months in San Antonio total before we were able to get the transfer. And again, I just think with everything that we went through, the transfer process, I know isn't as easy as it was for us. So we are very grateful for that. I think initially we were my approach was, Amelia being born, she was 1 pound, 14 ounces, and, 26 weeks, a micro preemie that, Amelia needed the care. So we weren't going to push for the transfer until it really seemed like Amelia was going to be okay. That was our first, our only concern was, we can deal with being away from home and deal with it more than Amelia can. So let's make sure she's okay. Once we were there for, she was there for 6 weeks, and she moved over to the grower section. So it was really just focusing on having her eat and get bigger before she could go home. That's when we asked our case manager again to start the process of trying to get us transferred back to Tennessee. And again, she said it's a slow moving train. Insurance isn't always going to approve it. But one thing that she pushed was the idea of continuity of care. So I think that's a big thing for anybody in the NICU, whether you need to transfer or not, is to understand that there is a after NICU. It isn't just released from the NICU and everything. You never have to go back or think about it again. There are care that will happen and follow-ups that will happen and things that are going to be important to do. And for us in Texas, they're only going to continue the care there. They're not going to call Tennessee and say, oh, hey, we have a NICU case here. Can you take it over? That would have fallen on us, and it would have fallen on us to get Amelia home somehow. So our case manager really pushed insurance for the continuity of care. It's going to be a lot easier for them to continue Amelia's care post NICU if you're able to transfer her to Tennessee. And again, I don't know, it was the week in between Christmas and New Year's. I don't know if they were in the holiday spirit, but insurance approved it, pretty much right away. We were home, a week later. We actually, we had gotten really close with a family in San Antonio, and at first it was going to happen so fast we weren't going to really have time to say bye to them. So we actually said, hey, could we have like a few extra days here? That's how quickly the transfer was getting approved, and we could have potentially left. So we left about 4 days after that. So
well, I want to talk to you about your post NICU experience, but one thing I did want to ask you about is how did you find housing? Did the case manager help you? How did you figure out that piece of it?
Yeah. So again, so many people came through for us. People that we knew, some in cases at the time we didn't know that well. The case manager was great. She provided, the Ronald McDonald House as a referral. That process was super straightforward. We never needed to stay at the Ronald McDonald House. As my wife's family, my in-laws, they're part of a Hilton program where they had over 1 million points, and they were able to get us lodging at a Hilton close by to the NICU for most of our stay. And then there was a family that I had a very loose connection with, and I went to San Antonio, but ended up becoming like family to us because they, right away they were reaching out. How can we help? You guys should come stay with us. We have the room. And initially, not knowing them very well and not wanting to, impose, we said, it's okay. We have a hotel. If you can let us do laundry at your house, that would be great, because we only have a certain amount of clothes because we only packed for vacation. So we really need to do laundry. But then the relationship with them just grew so quickly. They are just the greatest people. And we actually stayed with them for about 3 weeks in December around Christmas and stuff. So we did a little bit of hotel and a little bit of staying with a very nice family.
You never know, some friendships for life, right?
Exactly.
That you build. Now, talk a lot about, as a NICU mom myself, we talk a lot about the mom's experience through the NICU. Um, but I wanted to take a minute and just talk to you as Amelia's dad, what the NICU experience looked like for you. What advice do you have for other dads going through the NICU?
Yeah, I mean, it's so intimidating. It's overwhelming, so my wife Kaylee had to have surgery, a C-section, and she was sedated or um, under anesthesia. So I was the one that went to the NICU initially with Amelia because, Kaylee was still, not awake, recovering. And I can still remember just walking to the NICU with the nurses and just being so overwhelmed. There were so many people, there were so many machines, it was making a lot of noises. It was just the most overwhelming thing in the world. And then you look down and you have this baby that's under 2 pounds, and like, man, how is this going to work out? So just trying to take it all in, but just being so overwhelmed initially, and then just being involved. That's my biggest piece of advice that we heard was important that we were able to do, is just, whether it's reading to, through the isolette, reading, or just being there, letting them hear your voice, doing kangaroo care when you can, just being there and being present and taking some of those moments. Now, obviously, my wife was going to be the first to hold Amelia. I was not going to take that away, and kind of knowing my place as the dad, I wanted to be there and have that experience through my wife too. But also holding Amelia myself, like once my wife had the opportunity, and doing the kangaroo care and just talking to her and reading to her. Those are things that help me get by, and I would recommend that. I was told by nurses that, from what they see, just being involved, it just helps the baby so much, because they know your voice, they know who you are, and they get, it helps them a lot. So that's something that was important to me, that I would recommend, anyone to do.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And tell us how Amelia's doing today.
She's great. She is, so she's just about 7.5 months old, so 4.5 adjusted. And we're doing early intervention with her for physical therapy and OT, and just everything that we can that's available to us, we're doing. And she's already hitting some of her actual age milestones, which is great. And then the ones that she needs to get caught up on, we're working, really diligently with her. But when you have a NICU baby, especially, and Amelia being our first, I only know that experience, but just seeing everything that she's fighting through has been life changing for me. It really is, and it's just such an experience to see this little girl now, and just having her personality, and just fighting, and just having her own thoughts about things that are happening and expressing them. It's really been a great experience.
How did you get connected with the resources post NICU? Any recommendation for listeners of how to access those resources?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will, my wife has handled most of those. I know we had our NICU follow-ups, but I think, Kaylee just ended up Googling early intervention for Tennessee, the state that we're in, and the resources came up. So I would definitely recommend for any NICU parents to look up early intervention. It isn't something the NICU is going to do for you. They're going to do their own follow-ups and make sure that they're seen and that they're developing properly. But for early intervention, again, that's just to help them get caught up. That's something that would be available, and you should look up and kind of go out of your way to do.
And definitely call as soon as you get home from the NICU. It can take a couple weeks to get in for an evaluation. I still remember from over 13 years ago, the process for that, and it is so critical. And oftentimes you get caught up in going home and finally being able to have your baby or babies home with you, that you go, oh, I need to call, and then months go by and you haven't done it yet. And it is just so important to call and have early intervention come out to do the evaluation, see what resources might be available. Matt, what's your biggest lesson you learned during your NICU journey?
Biggest lesson I learned, a few of them. I would say number one, focusing on what's important in life. When everything happened here, it was, just upended everything. I stopped working for 2 months, just focused on Amelia and on Kaylee, and just it refocused myself on, and that's what's important. The work will be there. Yeah, it's important, but it's ultimately in the long run not. It's being there and being present in the moment. So I would say that, but then also, like I've alluded to, the kindness of people. I couldn't tell you how many people reached out to me on a daily basis just to check in and, supported us in multiple ways. We had, a lot of friends and family, whether it's sending us Grubhub gift cards, so we had, money to eat while we were down there, or just buying new stuff on our baby registry we didn't know we were going to need, because we didn't know we were going to need a micro preemie, or we were going to have a micro preemie. So just the kindness of people, it really kind of, helped me see that in the world we live in today, it can be so divided. People can be so, with social media, just so in their own space, that it was really nice to see the kindness of people, and just seeing people be there for us when we needed them.
So wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your story here with our listeners today. I think it's so important to hear a dad's perspective through the NICU as well. And I do want to remind our listeners that we do have a monthly NICU dads group. If you're interested in receiving the invitation, the calendar invitation for that, you can send an email to programs@todayisagooddday.org. But it's a great group of dads who get together virtually. My husband started this group during COVID, and it's a nice way for dads just to connect with one another. But anything else, Matt, you want to share with our listeners here today?
No, not that I can think of. Just the NICU experience is unlike any other. I didn't know much about it initially, and just learning as I go. So, I'd recommend, anyone putting it into their journey when they're pregnant, just doing a little research and just learning more about the NICU. That way, if you end up there, you're kind of a little more prepared. But it will change you, because you'll get to see hopefully your little one just fight and thrive, and it'll just change your life. So I appreciate you letting me come on and tell my story.
Thank you. Thanks for being here with us on the NICU Today podcast. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the NICU Today podcast, brought to you by Today is a Good Day. Learn more at todayisagooddday.org.